Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you to the ICS to invite me as a speaker here. Based on the shortage of time, we will start right away about the compensation mechanism in bladder outlet obstruction. We should think outside the box. And why is that? Because physical basis shows biophysical connection between the heart system and the bladder. Both systems are physically similar based on flowing incompressible fluids in tubular system. This is a physical law. And if you take a closer look to the cycle, the heart cycle is quite similar than the micturition cycle, with a filling phase, with a relaxed ventricle or detrusor, with isochoric contraction during building up the pressure, ejection at maximum contraction, and isochoric relaxation. So if you take a closer look to the compensation mechanism of the heart in chronic elevated outflow renentency, we have the cardiomyopathy. First, we have dilatative with a low pressure and a high volume. Secondly, we have hypertrophic or concentric with a high pressure and a low volume. And to complete the cardiomyopathy, we also have the restrictive with the contraction and relaxation disturbance. So in our retrospective analysis of over 11 years of videodynamics, we evaluate subjective parameters like IPSS, daily micturition frequency, and as you can see, objective parameters as well, which are urodynamic parameters. All patients were included with the diagnosis bladder outlet obstruction, and we categorized these into 3 groups with respect to pressure. Group 1 was we defined as underactive detrusor with the pressure below 30 centimeter water. Group 2 was the normal active detrusor, and Group 3 was hyperactive detrusor with pressures above 50 cm. Statistical analysis was performed by Kruskal-Wallis. So in our total population of nearly 4,500 videodynamical examination in 3,850 patients, we secured the diagnosis bladder outlet obstruction in 1,400 patients, 284 women, 11 and 27 men. That's approximately 40% of our total population. 88 patients were excluded by incomplete data set. So if you take a look at the subjective parameters, we see no statistical differences in all parameters, defining in micturition frequency, age, BMI, IPSS, and LQI. If you take a look on the objective parameters, you can see that there are highly significant differences in maximum systometric capacity and post-void residual. So in conclusion, based on the compensation ability in hollow organs, we observed 3 different kinds of compensation in bladder outlet obstruction with respect to pressure. Group 1, the dilatative or eccentric vesicomyopathy with detrusor underactivity and a high maximum systometric capacity due to volume exposure. Group 2 was normotropic vesicomyopathy with a regular detrusor pressure. The reason for that is unknown. And Group 3, hypertrophic or concentric vesicomyopathy with detrusor overactivity and decreased maximum systometric capacity due to the detrusor due to the pressure exposure. The normograms are highly specific for Group 3, but not sufficient for Group 1 and 2, meaning 47% of the patients in our population with bladder outlet obstruction were not included. So we suggest there should be an adaptation of the normograms with respect to PVR and MCC. Just to complete, there were highly significant differences only observed for maximum systometric capacity and post-void residual, and there were no significant differences in all other relevant parameters as well as patients' characteristica. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Open for question. Please, Peter.
Good morning. Here I am.
You again. Hello.
I'm at the north side of you.
I was fixed here on the left
I
side.
can imagine.
Don't
You
worry.
did a good thing. The question is outside which box you are. Basically, what you're telling is known for decades, also in urodynamics.
Can I just break into that? Can I go back to my lecture? Because I want to explain what bladder outlet obstruction was defined by the ICS.
And that's my question. if you use only pressure of the pressure flow analysis, you will get the results being self-fulfilling prophecy, since bladder outlet obstruction is defined as pressure and flow. And you should combine pressure and flow rate by ICS standard to define bladder outlet obstruction. Otherwise, you are confusing pressure and contraction and contractility. And I think you get the results that you got because of that definition that you used of outlet obstruction.
Well, I think that the bladder outlet obstruction definition is incomplete because we perform our diagnostic by videodynamics, so we can also see if there is a bladder outlet obstruction. For example, in strictures, or if you see in women, for example, if you have like a cystocele, you have a functional obstructive component, and in these patients, you can see that they compensate this subvesical obstructive component by several compensation mechanisms, including a lower pressure during the contraction phase with a high post-void residual. On the other side, we also have the other spot. However, I can give you also, when I go back to my lecture, I have a case report where you can see what kind of problem we have with this kind of definition. Is it possible?
I would move forward to the next question.
Abrams, Bristol. Thank you very much. This concept of decompensation. Now, I've thought about this for a while, and would you agree that in order to say a bladder is decompensated or decompensating, you need to do sequential urodynamics at time intervals in the same person? Without the natural history in individual patients, decompensation or compensation can only be a theory. Am I correct?
Well, I don't understand quite what you mean, because when we see the patient, we get the patient with a high, for example, this patient here, we had a high post-void residual in this patient, and if you see the urodynamic results in this patient, you have a non-obstructive patient. But however, if you take a look at the bladder neck, yeah, this is highly obstructive. So these kind of patients, we lose them in our diagnostic approach when we only rely on the normograms and on the digital outcome of the urodynamic examination. So I don't want to disagree that bladder outlet obstruction is pressure flow related, but it is incomplete, and we lose patients with a bladder outlet obstruction, but with not an elevated detrusor pressure because of this decompensation. You can train these patients. However, if there can be a switch between detrusor underactivity and overactivity, for example, when you have a patient with acute urinary retention, if you perform a urodynamic afterwards, you can see that these patients actually develop, in most cases, a small bladder, like a highly contractile bladder. Why this is like that, we don't know. But this should be researched more intensively, I think.
I mean, you've introduced here another concept, the concept that you can look at a picture and say that's an obstructive bladder neck. Now, I came into urodynamics with Dr. D'Ancona 40 years ago, and the old bosses used to say, this is an obstructive prostate, and we proved urodynamically that the appearance of the urethra does not tell you whether the patient has obstruction or not. So I'm interested you're going back 40 years in your concept that that picture is obstructive. I wouldn't have said that picture.
This is not the prostate, this is just the bladder neck. This is a bladder neck sclerosis. However, I don't agree with your thing, because even if we were discussing this issue for the last 40 years, I don't think that we are making this all for clear right now. And everybody who works clinically with people with bladder outlet obstruction, I think they will agree with me that they are more than just the contractile bladder.
Dr. Alloussi, thank you very much. We need to move on.
Thank you.